That's a good one. I think. There's a good A-rig fish, finally. My goodness. A good A-rig fish. Whew. Been trying to teach myself this all morning, and I finally get a good fish. Well, we're here on Lake of the Ozarks, and I've been trying for 3 hours to get a bite on this stupid A-rig and catch one, and I'm still struggling, but I got a good one here. Really nice spot, good 17, 18-inch spot right here on the A-rig. Trying to learn how to fish these things. Most of the tournaments that have been won here lately, I've been guys catching good ones like that and bigger on this A-rig, so I'm late to the party, I know that, but I do not like fishing these things. I don't have the hang of it yet, but I'm trying to force myself to learn, so we're going to keep at it. Hey everybody, Happy New Year's Eve. I let off this video, this version of 3 takeaways, with that big spot I caught on the A-rig, because that was pretty much the highlight of my fishing here for the last week and a half or so, ever since we got back from Wisconsin. It's been kind of an interesting winter so far on Lake of the Ozarks, and that really leads to my first takeaway. Number one is the fishing is tough right now on Lake Ozark, and I don't care what anybody says. The guys that really know what they're doing, that know how to fish those A-rigs and fish them deep over the brush piles using their electronics, a few of those guys have got them figured out, but the rest of us are not. I fished a Midwest Outdoors tournament last Saturday, and that was a good event. Those guys put on a good wintertime circuit there out of Kaufman, and they had over 60, I want to say 62 boats in attendance. A really nice turnout. It was a warm day, real slick and calm, no wind whatsoever, and we had about a 45-minute fog delay, but it was a good event, and there was a lot of good anglers that struggled a little bit. A handful of folks that catch them like they always do, especially this time of year, guys that got it figured out, but the rest of us struggled. I didn't weigh a keeper. Did not weigh a keeper. Did not have a fish until about 12:30 in the afternoon. I gambled and went way up the gravelways. With it being calm like that, I could run my jet boat a pretty good distance and not to worry about the big waves or the big boats this time of year, but that didn't work. I found some shad and some great big gizzard shad up there across that bridge to the town of Gravois Mills, and got a little bit excited when I saw that, but there weren't any fish up there with them. I guess it was too shallow, but regardless, I didn't start catching the fish until midday when I went farther down the lake and started throwing what I hate throwing, those stupid Alabama rigs. And so that's what I want to talk a little bit about here next, is from a beginner's perspective, what I've learned so far in fishing these Alabama rigs, because I by no means have got any business teaching anybody that knows what they're doing how to fish one. I'm trying to learn them myself. But a few tips I can share based on fishing with Mark Dunbar and kind of watching and studying some of the other videos of guys that are doing pretty good on these things, is there's a lot of little tricks there that sometimes they tell you about and sometimes they don't. Number one is, from what I've seen on Lake of the Ozarks and fishing with Mark, those bigger 4 and 5 pound fish that a lot of those guys are catching, they're down deeper. They're down probably 12, 15, sometimes maybe even 20 foot deep, a lot of times over the brush piles. So you can get bit fishing these things for those suspended fish under the dock foam, or maybe on the commercial docks, or maybe the wave breaks. But from what I've gathered in the limited time I've been fishing these, or fishing with people that know how to fish them, the bigger fish, they're down deeper where you're not going to reach them fishing these things in 6 to 7 feet of water or less, more often than not. There's no golden rules in fishing because it can always change depending on wind conditions or water clarity or what have you. But from what I've gathered, if you're not fishing these things down deeper over tops of the brush piles, you're not going to catch a lot of those 4 and 5 pound fish. That one big one that Mark caught, he lets it sink a little bit. He's got his electronics. He can watch and know how deep to let these things sink before you start dragging over top of the brush piles. Yeah. And that's one of the most frustrating things about these things, is if you don't have good electronics to know what you're doing to see your bait and the pile, and sometimes the fish reacting to it, you're going to struggle.
it's just a reality. You got to spend the money and learn how to use electronics, or like me, fight it, avoid it for as long as you can, and then get your butt handed to you by others that have figured it out. But one of the things I learned in fishing with Mark is, because I got at the front of his boat where he's got the good graphs, the good electronics, and
Well, I hit a brush pile there and nothing. At least I felt like I kind of knew what I was doing. I could see the bait and know where to slow it down and speed it up. Although I got to admit, it'd be different if I was catching a 5-pounder every now and then. I don't like staring at the screen and fishing like this. I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't like doing that. Now again, if I started catching 5s doing it, it'd be a different story, but very much so.
And it's a different style of fishing. It's a different skill set altogether. You do have to spend your time staring at the screen and monitoring your bait to know when to let it drop, when to reel it over the top, where the brush piles are. And you spend pretty much your entire day staring at that screen. I just don't like fishing like that. I've got a live scope on my jet boat. It's an old LVS 92 with the Garmin 94 SV, and the transducer, I think after 5 years, is starting to go bad because my image is terrible. But I just don't like fishing that way. I'm going to have to learn it if I want to be competitive in the winter. I know that. I just don't enjoy it as much. I just don't. So I'm trying to figure out other ways to catch them. And so one of the things I experimented with in fishing these Alabama rigs, and again, I'm just teaching myself how to do this because I'm not that good at it, clearly. So when you fish them deeper and you let them sink down to where the fish are at, one of the risks you run by doing that is you're going to get hung up on either the dock cables or hung up on the brush piles. Because you can't see your bait to know when to speed it up or when to lift it up over top of that stuff, inevitably these lovely hooks right here are going to catch on everything down there, and then you get them hung up and it's a pain in the butt. And especially if you're the guy in the back of the boat, the last thing you want to do is make the guy in the front of the boat stop so you can go back and try and get your rig unhung. So my ingenious solution that didn't work was studying some YouTube videos, and they've got some weedless hooks that you can use for the A-rigs. And I think it was Lake Fork Guide, and it's a couple of years old now, had shared this, where he's using these owner twist lock hooks with a 1/16 ounce weight on his Alabama rigs. And I've got one set up here. So the theory is throw this out there, and if you can't see your bait or you don't have the electronics, you can let it sink and you run less of a risk of getting these things hung up all the time because you got weedless hooks on the bottom. Sounds good in theory, right? So I tried that quite a bit on Saturday, and what I found was I was getting a lot of bites on this, but I couldn't get a hook in them. No, I think most of them were smaller fish that were up higher in the water column below the dock foam. So most of them were probably little fish, but I got at least 10 bites on this one. No, it's close to this one right here. It was a bladeless version with these Kitex on the weedless hook on there. And I got a bunch of bites on there, but I didn't hook in one of them. So I finally cut that one off and went back to more of a traditional Alabama rig with the exposed hooks and the screw lock weights on there. And I started catching fish. I caught maybe half a dozen, and they were small. They were, 12 to 14 inches, but at least they were hitting it and I could get a hook in them. So that made me feel a little bit better by doing that. And the other tip I can share with the Alabama rigs is on that day, on Saturday, when it was super slick and calm and you had to struggle to find any wind anywhere, I could not get bit on this one with the blades on there. I don't know if it was just too much for them or I wasn't getting it deep enough or not, but I got nothing on that. When I went to more of a finesse one, when I cut the blades off, I started catching fish. For what that's worth. Again, none of them were keepers, but at least I could go from getting no bites to catching a few fish and having fun using this Alabama rig with the blades cut off. And this is just a Yum Flash Mob Junior that I was throwing there. So I caught some fish on this, they just weren't the size. But again, from what I can tell by learning how to fish these things, is if you're not fishing them down deeper over tops of the piles, you're probably not reaching those bigger fish. At least on the calm days. Maybe on a windy day or something, if you got a little bit of color in the water, maybe they'll move up a little bit shallower where you can get to them. But it's been my limited experience trying to learn how to fish these things, but those bigger ones are down deeper. So that's a little bit of what I learned on these Alabama rigs. And the baits matter too. You know, I've experimented with the Kitex, with the Crush Cities, with the Sixth Sense Divines. I'm not sure one's worked any better than the other. I know there's a lot of guys using those Bait Cave custom baits, and I haven't tried those yet, but I probably will, because I think those guys are doing really good on there. And there may be something to the theory of the tail waggle, whether it's too much for them in cold water, or you need a slower, more of a wobble to it, or what. But it's one of the many things about these stupid Alabama rigs that I've not figured out yet, but I'm still trying. And so I know I'm not the only one out there that's struggling with that, so I'll keep trying to share what I can as I learn how to fish these things. But if you got any tips of your own to share, I'd love to hear them. I'm sure the viewers would love to hear them as well. Because these things are just, I hate fishing them. But I hate getting my butt kicked worse. And so I'm forcing myself to learn how to do it. A couple little things I can share. On your dummy baits, Missouri's got a law where you can only have 3 hooks on there, so you got to have 2 dummy baits on the top. If your A-rig has the swivel, the 360 swivel on the top ones, you might cut those off and hook these up here, because your baits, your top baits, your dummy baits may twist and roll. If they're doing that, that's not a realistic image, and you're not going to get bit. So you may have to cut those top swivels off and attach them to a swivel that doesn't rotate all the way around, so that you limit the roll, the 360 roll of your dummy baits. And the other thing is how you position those baits on your little spring keeper there. There's this little Bass Pro spring keepers that hook on there. That stuff matters. So look at your bait in the water as it's moving through the water. If this thing is rolling sideways or upside down, and the rest of these are going right side up, that's not very a natural look either for a school of bait fish. So you might have to adjust the spin on there, how far you've got it turned on there to where it runs upright and not sideways, to where all 5 of your baits are running upright in the water, looking as natural as possible. That's another little tip I can share that I learned the hard way too. So anyway, those are some beginner A-rig tips that I can share with you all out there from somebody that is still learning how to fish these things myself. And I'll spend more time this winter, but I'm going to take a break from it for right now. But third takeaway is, if you're getting frustrated, it's okay just to take a break. I'm going to take a break from Lake of the Ozarks for a little while, maybe do a little crappie fishing to change things up, but I'm going to go after some smallmouths on the Gasconade here. That's what I got my jet boat for in the first place. And I'm getting to the point now where it's probably time to take a little break. So I was going to fish the Angry Pirate tournament today on Tuesday, the last day of the year, New Year's Eve. But it's cold and windy, and I'm not on any fish. And as much as I wanted to kind of see the guys and visit and catch up a little bit, I didn't want to throw my money away either. And I was getting kind of a poor attitude. So you know what, just take a break. So I'm going to change things up, go out for some smallmouth on the Gasconade, and hopefully share some smallmouth footage with you in the coming months. But it's been an interesting fall so far. The last 4 or 5 times I've been on Lake of the Ozarks, it's been a struggle. When it gets to that point, it's okay to take a break, kind of reset, keep studying, keep learning, keep grinding, but don't get to the point where it's not fun anymore. Anyway, that's my 3 takeaways for this week. I hope you all have a great new year. I'm looking forward to seeing more of you on the water here in the coming months. I do appreciate all the folks that commented about the channel. That's great. I love visiting with folks when we're out there on the water at the weigh-ins. So love catching up with folks doing that. Appreciate the support for the channel, and we'll keep putting out some good information, helping you learn just as I'm learning as I go. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great new year.